It's a little longer than 12 on 12, but I'll tell you, it's worth watching.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So WPRI.com has this new series called 12 on 12, which is a digital expansion of news features, and it's really well worth watching. And this latest that was produced by Target 12 on 12 is about double the length. I think it's more of a brand than it is a fixed time, but I will tell you, you will think it was too short because it was incredibly compelling. Glad to have you in on this Wednesday evening. This is probably a program that you'll see a couple of times, so we're going to forego the conversation about today's news, although there's always a plenty. We can pick that up again tomorrow if you're seeing the show on the original air date, which is the night before Halloween. Tim White, who heads up the investigative unit at Target 12, puts together another stellar piece. He's got this fascination with the mob. I don't know what that's all about, but he can explain that to us. The secret FBI tapes that expose the mob. This is quite fascinating. And even for those of you who are not, Godfather junkies, this stuff is incredibly compelling because there's a lot in this particular story of, like, I can't believe it. Like, really? I thought they were more sophisticated than that in some ways. Here is one of the news packages that tease the series to give you a little bit of a taste.
One of the people we talked to for this investigation was retired FBI Special Agent Walt Steffens, who has never spoken publicly about his role in this case.
The Mafia induction ceremony took place on October 29, 1989 at this home in Medford, Massachusetts. It was owned by the sister of one of the men who was set to be inducted into the crime family that day. 24 hours before the ceremony, FBI agents were watching as the homeowners of 34 Guild Street packed up and left.
That afternoon of Saturday the 28th, they threw a couple of pieces of luggage in the back of their car and they headed north. And one of our surveillance teams followed them up into New Hampshire, and once we confirmed that they were out of town, we assumed for the weekend, we came back and set up on the residence and prepared for the entry that night.
Microphones were placed on the first floor in a finished section of the basement because agents weren't sure where in the house the ceremony would actually take place.
The decision was made to go with a hard wire, and so posing as utility men, some of our agents strung a wire along the telephone poles through the neighborhood.
With the microphones inside the home, FBI technicians strung a wire from 34 Guild Street out to the telephone poles and up the road to 16 Guild Street. But there was a problem. 16 and 34 Guild Street are on the same side and around a slight bend, so agents would have a hard time taking pictures of who was coming and going from 34 Guild Street, which would have made it harder to know exactly who they were listening to. So the FBI took a chance. A group of agents knocked on the door here at a home across the street. The homeowners were leaving for the day and, with no questions asked, let them set up. Before the ceremony began, mob boss Raymond Jr. Patriacca had something to say. You will occasionally hear a television in the background.
We're all here to bring in some new members of our family. And more than that, to start maybe a new beginning with all the past started behind us. So they're coming to our family to start a new thing with us. Hopefully, it'll be a rebuild of what we had years past. And
we go in depth on why Junior Patriacca wanted to start what he calls a new beginning in the crime family in our 12 on 12 digital original, The Mafia Tapes, right now on WPRI.com and the WPRI News app.
It's a fascinating piece. Congratulations.
Thanks,
on this
Dan.
one. The actual tapes were exposed in court.
Yes.
A couple years after the charge.
1991, they were played publicly for the first time at a trial in Connecticut. There were several people on trial. One of the elements was underboss was murdered, which actually, the murder of Billy Grasso led to the induction ceremony. We can get into that if you want, but they were played for the first time there. everyone got wind that the tapes existed the year prior, in 1990. A bunch of indictments came down. Dozens of mobsters were wrapped up. And in the affidavits, there was this reference to the mob induction ceremony, and that was a, oh man, kind of moment. Because if I can, you have to, this sounds stupid, but prior to 1989, a defendant could walk into court accused of being a member of organized crime, and their defense could quite easily be, the government's making it up, the mob is something you see in the movies, it doesn't exist. This, with the tape, the government could prove the organization. In the RICO statute, proving the organization was central, and they finally had.
In fact, Raymond Sr., and you put this in your piece, Raymond Sr. Testified at Congress to say, more or less, you guys are nuts, that
Right.
this thing doesn't exist. The meeting, the central meeting, is a kumbaya meeting in a lot of ways. There's a handful of guys that get made at this meeting in this completely innocuous location in Medford on this street, which is just, well, it doesn't have to be palatial, I guess, to get together and do what you got to do. But the meeting is a, let's see if we can make the peace over a couple of hits that had happened prior.
It was a violent time, and the then mob boss Raymond Jr. Patriacca was feeling the heat. As a matter of fact, it was very likely he was going to get killed as well. His underboss got whacked in Connecticut, and then a guy named Frank Salemi, or as we know him, Cadillac Frank, just got out of prison, tight with Raymond Jr. Patriacca. He was shot multiple times in Saugus. They tried to kill him. He was able to scramble away into a pizza shop. Junior Patriacca is looking around going, this does not look good. So he did what this renegade Boston faction that was committing these murders, or at least one murder, an attempted murder, was he opened the books. And of the 4 people that were inducted into the crime family that day, 3 were from Boston and had ties to that renegade faction. So this was Junior Patriacca trying to settle disputes, let bygones be bygones, and start anew. He even says that in the recording, that he wanted to start a new beginning, and that's what he's referencing.
And Cadillac wasn't too happy about it because he wasn't included.
Well, I don't even think he would have showed up, because I think there's an element talking to investigators.
He was saying he was not well liked by the Boston faction,
They didn't
obviously.
like him. They didn't like him.
And he was offended over
Getting shot.
and the lack of protection, love. I don't know what the term is.
Well, look, he spent a lot of time in prison
with this group here in Rhode Island.
He had he blew up an attorney that was representing somebody who was testifying against Raymond L.S. Patriacca, and so Salemi tried to get that attorney killed, and he went to prison for a long time. And when he got out, he felt it was his time to make some money and show me some love here, and he was pretty brash, and I guess the Boston faction felt was arrogant. Look, there's no way he was showing up to that house. First of all, I'm not sure he was even invited. Second of all, he probably would have thought, and maybe did think,
Setup.
It's a setup.
Yeah.
And they're gonna kill me in this house in Medford.
The house is hilarious
Yeah.
in the sense that it is so understated. It's as I think the story goes, it's the sister of one of the key principals who was in jail and getting furloughed,
Yeah.
who says, I need a weekend, and identifies where he's going to be for the weekend, which is his sister's house.
He does. And
His sister skips out to New Hampshire, right, for the weekend. The
Right.
FBI trails them and says, oh my God, we got the house, it must be here. And then they start bugging the house, right?
And in the furlough application for Vinny Federico, is the guy who got you're referring to get out of prison. He wrote the reason for his requested release was for family business, and he capitalized family. So the FBI wasn't sure if it were going to be 34 Guild Street in Medford, Massachusetts, but that was one of the clues that they had. Like, okay, this is probably going to be the location.
One of the fascinating parts of this whole thing is the legality that goes along with and the process by which you can actually peek in on these things. We'll talk about that. Again, it's 12 on 12. You want to see the whole thing in its entirety 2 or 3, 4 times. Stay with us.
We're all here to bring in some new members of our family. And more than that, to start maybe a new beginning with all the past starters behind us. But they're coming to our family to start a new thing with us. Hopefully, we'll be a rebuild of what we had years past. And bygones are bygones.
It's kind of a formal kumbaya moment for Raymond Patriacca Jr., who was leading this ceremony, or had a key role in putting this kumbaya meeting in Medford together. A little noisy because there's a TV on in the background, huh?
Yeah, they had a TV blaring pretty loudly. And look, the FBI had wired up the house.
Was that purposeful? They put the TV on so...
The famous Angulo tapes of Boston, they would crank the radio to try and drown it out. In this case, from the FBI agents I talked to who worked the case, they don't think so. They had, you could hear, it was on a Sunday, and you could hear like the Sunday news talk show programs playing in the background if you listen to it. We did our best to extract a lot of that. Those are analog tapes, like the old cassette tapes you listen to, you know, tunes going into high school. That's what they used. It was 1989. They had a tremendous amount of hiss on them, so we tried to digitally clean
Interesting,
them
there
up.
was a TV on downstairs too, right? Because well, one of the participants brought his female friend along.
Vinny Federico, the guy who was released from prison that we talked in the
was
first
picked
segment.
up by a member of Mayor Flynn's staff.
Right, she worked for neighborhood services, and yeah,
goodness.
she was sitting in the basement while they're upstairs conducting this mob ceremony. She's downstairs watching TV, and they had no idea.
The way they were able to bug this house, I think, is one of the core fascinations of the story. One of the first utilizations of a congressional authority to have a roving bug, correct?
Right.
That doesn't necessarily refer to the technology, which was much different back then than it is now.
Yes.
But it was referring to the idea that, okay, we got permission to bug a target, but we don't know if that target will stay in the same location, correct?
That you sum it up really well. And the problem was with organized crime, and not just La Cosa Nostra, but particularly at that time, 1989, we're talking about capital M mafia in the prosecution thereof, was dealing with the challenge of mobsters walking and talking, or as the FBI agent says in the piece, renting a hotel room for a night and getting out of there. Traditionally, these wiretaps, called a Title III, you have to go to a judge and say, some real bad stuff's going on, here's all the evidence we have on the bad stuff, we need a listening device to really to eavesdrop on a citizen of this country. It's a big deal. And here is the address where it's going to happen. Well, often they didn't have an address, or they needed to be more nimble than that. So this is brand new in 1989. It was controversial because a lot of people thought it was government overreach. And actually, in the wake of this, there was a lot of pushback on the use of these roving bugs. But they were able to, for the first time, to employ it in Medford, Massachusetts in 1989 because, again, they weren't sure of the location. It could have been Providence, could have been Worcester. They had another location in Boston, so they needed to be flexible about where they were going to put these listening devices.
And the utilization of the neighborhood was another great break. Turns out, you know, a legitimate FBI agent lives 3 doors down, and they're able to use that as kind of the central place from which they work. And then they knock on the door because they don't have an angle, right, to be able to see the thing. Knock on the door of a neighbor, and the neighbor says, "Okay, I'll get out of here." And they used that house. I mean, it was fascinating.
Talk about the bad luck the Patriarca crime family had in choosing, of all the neighborhoods in New England, they choose one where an FBI agent lives just a few doors down from where the actual ceremony took place. And that's where they, again, 1989, the technology is what it is. They ran a wire from 34 Guild Street to 16 Guild Street where the FBI agent lived, and set up in the dining room all their clunky recording devices in there.
Wearing the utility outfits and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's very much like you see in the movies.
New England Telegraph and telephone.
Yeah, they're setting up with the fake uniforms on, and
well, this way they
nobody in the neighborhood's going, I wonder if that's a stakeout.
Well, there's no vans around, and that's what the advantage of having a house to set up in it was. And you know, you didn't have to set up a van that might draw attention or anything like that. It was opportune for the FBI.
You actually went back to you start the piece in the neighborhood on the street.
Yeah.
The neighbor across remembers.
Right. It was
How old is she?
She was in her late 50s. I'm gonna guess she was in her late 50s. So she was.
Oh, so she was a kid.
Yeah, well, 30 years ago, 20. She'd be in her late 20s when this happened. And she remembers, as I said in the piece, she remembers all these people showing up, these well-dressed, good-looking men coming out of these cars, walking into the house. And she remembers her neighbor had a baby recently, the ones that you referred to that went up to New Hampshire. And she thought, oh, it's a baptism. Well, she was right. It was a baptism, but of just a different kind.
And the neighbor across the street from the FBI agent was cooperative.
Right. That, as an FBI agent told me, they were friends. The guy, he wasn't told, and he didn't ask why they wanted to use the house, and he happened to be leaving for the day. Stan, you go ahead. You can whatever you need to do. I'm taking off for the day anyway.
Anecdotally, you offer, I don't think this is, I know this is not in the piece, but there are new owners of this particular home.
Yeah, I was hoping they might let me in.
Right.
And I was hoping they would talk on camera. They declined to do that. They bought the house this year. And I was able to talk to a roommate who, again, didn't want to go on camera. So they live there, but they also have a roommate that's in there probably to offset the really expensive Boston area housing costs. And it's pretty clear from my conversation they were unaware of the history of the home. I think they were initially scared that a capital crime had happened there, and I was happy to put them at ease that no crime had actually taken place. Holding a mob induction ceremony is actually doesn't break any statutes. It's not illegal.
No, but it builds the conspiracy.
It's an element in the RICO conspiracy, that organization that they needed to prove. So I think it was not a great phone call to get from me. Hey, we'd love to get into your house where a mob induction ceremony had happened 30 years ago. I'm not sure the real estate agent had to disclose that in any way because, again, it wasn't a crime, but I think we caught him a little flat-footed on that.
When we come back, we'll talk about the relevance of La Cosa Nostra now and whether this is as Hollywood as some would think it is. Stay with us. Again, the online production here, the Mafia Tapes 12 on 12. By the way, I didn't get the right memo, I guess. 12 on 12 doesn't mean 12 minutes. It means it's a series over the course of the year, once per month, meaning 12
months a year.
12 productions in a year.
And I was Mr. October.
Yes.
Because the ceremony happened in October 1989.
It's the best time of the year. What caused you to want to run this story down again?
Yeah,
Or to package something that everybody knew.
Well, again, the anniversary was October 29th, 1989. We dropped this documentary on that date. So it's a 30th anniversary. And, you know, a lot of people were involved, so I wanted to find out what happened to all those people that were involved. And a lot of it I knew. You know, you think that this is ancient history, but I think it was 2 summers ago, I spent almost an entire summer in Boston federal court covering a mob trial. And one of the people that testified against Frank Salemi, who used to be a mob boss, was one of the guys who was sworn in that day, who took that secret oath of omerta to never break the code of silence, to remain loyal to the family. And here he is raising his right hand. It was Bobby DeLuca, a capo of the Patriarca crime family, who was testifying against Salemi. So he clearly broke the oath that he took in 1989. And I wanted to go back and look and see what happened to all the players here from Junior Patriarca on down.
Salemi is the guy that talked on the Bulger case.
Right, and this is a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Salemi, who took an oath on a different day and became a made member, he too cooperated with the government, but he only cooperated against the people that he felt had a corrupt relationship with the FBI. So that's Whitey Bulger, a household name in this country, and Stephen the Rifleman Flemmi. He never testified against any other members of the mob. So, you know, one of the elements I wanted to look at is, what does omerta mean? And I think for some people it exists. For some people, they consciously broke that, and to others, like Frank Salemi, it meant something different.
And the other thing which is interesting about the oath that you take and the commitment that you make is that there's no way to retire or resign, reportedly.
Yes. You get out dead, I think it's the saying.
You know, whether by natural causes or whatever.
Otherwise, yeah.
But Raymond Patriarca Jr. was allowed to walk.
He was. So he stepped down as boss after it came out in 1990 that the recording had happened. And honestly, he was probably on the way out anyway, and Nicholas Bianco took over. I'm throwing out a lot of names. The point was, yeah, he went away to prison, and when he came out 8 years later, he just sort of drifted off. He'll always be considered a made member, but he's not involved, to anyone's knowledge, with organized crime anymore. He got into real estate. He still lives here in Rhode Island and is not involved in that. And that is unusual, and I think it speaks to the respect that, two things, the respect that they had for his dad, Raymond L.S. Patriarca, and also the state of organized crime in the modern day. That probably wouldn't have floated 30, 40 years ago.
Their main economy is still sports gambling.
Sure.
It's kind of funny. A buddy of mine was talking about his bookie the other day, unnamed, And we were talking about another guy who...
The bookie's not Twin River
Well,
mobile
he was
app,
talking
I
about another
take it?
guy that might owe some money and blah, blah, blah. And, I didn't pay much attention to the details, I swear. And I've never engaged in that activity. But the point
Because
that...
you realize stories that start with a friend of mine usually mean me.
Right. No, I swear
Okay,
it wasn't. So, but he said something to me
This is a
which is
safe
interesting.
place, Dan.
Thank you. Sort of. He said something that was interesting. He said, the bookies don't break legs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That if you owe a guy money, there are ways that they're going to pursue you, but not in the old days. That kind of behavior doesn't necessarily exist anymore. I don't know if that's true or not because I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it, but it seems to me to make sense in terms of the old-fashioned operation modus operandi, so to speak, of organized crime seems to have waned on a couple of or multiple levels, right?
Yeah, so threats and implied threats, it depends on who your bookie is, and they build relationships with the people that they have. The point is that bookies usually have to pay protection money to the family, if you will. And they make money in other ways. It's just the government has legalized so much of it, the lottery, sports betting here in Rhode Island. Right. And do not believe the Godfather lie. For the people that love that movie, I'm sorry, Godfather 2 is fantastic, but it is a lie perpetuated by that movie that continues today and is very frustrating that the mob was not involved in narcotics. The mob is involved in any way they can make money, and you make a lot of money through drugs. And it might not be direct sales. It could be protecting a shipment of drugs that are passing through your region. That is still being involved in narcotics.
On a scale of 0 to 10, what's all the smart people about this saying about the veracity of organized crime right now in our region? 0 being nothing, 10 being
so
maxed
10 being
out.
the heyday of organized crime. It's probably hovering at a 4 right now, and that's just a number I'm pulling out. It's not gone. It's still considered a threat. They rely more on associates of organized crime who don't have, Sicilian blood and that traditional thing, as opposed to made members of organized crime. And it's still sports betting and the like.
Any of the characters who still remain on this side reach out to you since this production?
Since or prior to, I talk to people. You always hope that maybe one day they'll decide to give you that interview you've been looking for. So prior to, I talked to some people. I haven't, my phone has, we're taping this the day after it drops, so ask me in a week.
It's fascinating work, and it's a must watch. So make sure you do. Appreciate it. And by the way, the tip off the old block, Dad's in this thing too, and the resemblance is uncanny. Final word when we come back. So enjoy that digital series. When we reconvene tomorrow, we'll be taking a look at some of the news surrounding potential development in Pawtucket that is percolating. Does McCoy survive this, or does new development more or less provide a new direction for that piece of land in Pawtucket, and a whole lot more. So tune in also on the radio from 3 till 6 on WPRO. Appreciate you checking in with us. Have a great night. See ya.